Uh, I watched. I found this thing called Omnibus. Um, S. Thompson, Hunter S. Thompson, which Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was about. I was not. I'm not old enough to like go back to the 70s or the 60s, and I I didn't really understand that Fear and Loathing was something he started with all of his stories, that the titles of all of his stuff, or at least the stuff uh, that was really just this persona that he created, the one that Johnny Depp plays in Fear and Loathing. What that movie really is a story, is not Hunter himself, but this sort of alter persona. And know that this is pretty much in line with what the musicians were doing at the time around the early 70s, mid early 70s, and all that stuff. It was probably a result of the drug culture, that drugs tend to manipulate reality. So you can't really interview somebody, or you can't really do a story without um, being affected by the drugs. And then, so it's, so if you really wanted to bring your audience into, if you want to bring your audience into what you were working with, then, and your audience was on drugs, then wouldn't you want to make it a bit more unreal than real? The other thing is that in that particular episode, that omnibus thing, you really get a sense that this person was real, and plus that they were using film, and film is highly editable, but it is expensive compared to video. And video, on the other hand, is fairly cheap, hard to edit, very difficult to edit, pointless to edit. It's, if you did it with video, then there really would not be much point in being creative, in, you know, because you can't really do the kind of stuff that they did in TV shows like Monty Python's Circus. And the guy who directed that movie was a part of Monty Python, and that was I mean the that what's his name, Johnny Depp acted in. The omnibus thing, when they're talking about making the film, they're not talking about the Johnny Depp film. They're talking about the one that had Bill Murray in it playing Hunter. Um, the one with the buffaloes and stuff like that, the of the early '80s, because um, Fear and Loathing came out in the '90s. I think that's right. And so anyhow, the thing is that if you really wanted to do the sort of thing that Hunter S. Thompson did back in the '70s, to do it like people going on stage and being somebody completely different, the whole glamour rock period, where um, where David Bowie would go on stage after doing some drugs and pretended to be an alien creature, and I mean, not an alien creature, but be this Major Tom character, or whatever, the Ziggy Stardust character. All of your musicians at that time were trying to get into this same sort of Kiss on stage thing. And Kiss, I think the reason why they put on makeup and stuff like that was probably a result of the segregation, um, having the country having um, went from segregation to desegregation, and three of the members of Kiss are not white, and their drummer's white. And so, how are you going to become popular and create music and become and protect your you could protect your privacy? I mean, it was incredibly ingenious, and they wore these full suits and everything, and covered their face with paint, wore wigs, and whatever, enough that you could never really know what their nationality was. And they were Italian. I don't fully know them. It seemed to me like they were Italian and Middle Eastern and Indian, and you know I have no idea. I've not gone to the Wikipedia to find out what the nationalities are of the members of Kiss. But at the time, a lot of people wanted change, and everything was so unreal with Nixon and stuff. And people were using film, and there really wasn't much, as I point out to people, replayable media in the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. I was born in 1970, so I'm not old enough to like really be somebody to really talk about that period, other than what I experienced as a young boy, um, who couldn't read or write, but was already picking the music that I wanted, because my father, I would drag my father into a record store, and he had given me a record player, and I was just trying to, I was just taking advantage of the freedom that every child kind of lacks, because their parents kind of are at that point trying to rear them and everything. And the time the child really gets to be themselves is whenever they're in a store and they get to pick the thing that they want, that they have no clue what they're doing with it. All they're going on is just the cover art, and then they buy then the father buys the item. You take it home and you play it, and it was just my luck that the stuff I picked I really liked. The first LP I got was Rock and Roll Over by Kiss, and the first 45 was Don't Go Breaking My Heart by Elton John. Completely different kinds of music. But that's where it started, and that my whole love for music didn't start with that music. It started with the kind of music that they give kids whenever they're young, like Disney show tune, musical tunes and stuff. I didn't remember any of that shit, and I didn't really care for it as much as I cared for the stuff that I picked. And the reason why my website, Rock Me Amadeus, has text in there. That text in there, you can kind of read it, not kind of really read it. There's really no search engine. It's like a record store. You don't know what you're getting into. That's the whole idea, is that it's all is that I'm trying to give you as much of the randomness and like being a kid in a record store who can't read anything or understand anything. You really don't know what you're getting yourself into. That's the whole purpose of that with the website, is that if you knew what you're getting yourself into, you would pick exactly what it was you liked, and you would not find by accident something you never would have known anything about to actually take on something. I mean, the best way of developing a unique disposition and something from everybody else is just to not really know what you're getting yourself into, and then trying to figure out where you stand.